Okay, pleasure to have you. Now, Craig, tell our listeners, you spoke about a consultant being commissioned by the Bank of Jamaica to make recommendations in relation to changes to the Act. The BOJ say, yes, this is happening. What are some of the changes that you would like to see, particularly as it relates to information sharing in the industry?
Well, from our perspective, we like to see mandatory information sharing and pulling from at least regulated entities. This is something that we fought for in Guyana as well, and that was implemented, and it has had a profound impact on our operations there. And we think it would really help aid the industry in getting our key piece of resource that we need, which is information.
Okay, now tell our listeners exactly what you mean by information sharing. Is there a kind of information asymmetry where some parties have information that some parties are unable to get?
Yes, well, currently that existed before the advent of the bureaus.
Yes.
And now with the bureaus, you're expected to reduce that.
Right.
Of course, you'll never get it to zero, but you'll try to reduce that as much as possible.
Yes.
And that has been happening. But of course, the more information we gather, the more we reduce that information asymmetry. So at the moment, there are 3 bureaus that operate.
Yes.
We currently capture information independently, some of which we both have,
yes,
and some that we have that others don't have, and vice versa.
Okay. Now you're contending that in developed markets they don't battle on entities having information that the other doesn't have, but more on price and product. Now, how are we going to get this asymmetry to be reduced?
Well, in our view, you just need more people to share.
Okay.
With the whole credit information industry, you just need that buy-in from everybody. Once you get that, then you'll reduce the information asymmetry.
Terence Cooper, what's your view on that?
Yeah, well, I would tend to agree with Craig on those points. Right now, we have some entities that are still not reporting their information to the bureaus. And, you know, these are very important entities, some being banks, some being government agencies.
Okay.
And with that large gap, then the information and the consistency of the information is compromised. So that's where we need to see full participation by all credit grantors.
Okay.
To level that playing field.
So what would you love to see the central bank do in this regard to deal with that problem?
Well, I think first and foremost, the Credit Reporting Act needs to be revised.
Okay.
When we started this about 8-9 years ago, and the act was drafted in 2010, it was still fairly experimental. We didn't know exactly how it would translate into the market. Now that we've seen the market starting to develop and mature, it's time to revisit the act and tweak it to some extent to ensure that we maximize the benefit. And as was mentioned earlier, a consultant was hired.
Yes.
I believe Craig and I both had extensive conversations putting forward those recommendations. So once the report is completed and the BOJ has a chance to review it, we are hopeful that those changes will be implemented.
Okay. Now, Craig, in terms of competition, you are quoted as saying that the U.S. has 350 million people, but only has three major credit bureaus. You're contending that you do not want to see more competition in the market?
Yeah, I don't think it would aid the market at this time.
Okay.
Because it's going to increase information asymmetry. You're going to have a situation where, of course, the price to the consumer is going to be increased because institutions will now have
but tell our listeners, why is it that bringing more players into the market would worsen the problem of asymmetry? One would have thought that would have helped to reduce the problem.
Well, right. Based on where we are now with the market, what we have done with our banks, our financial institutions over the years that we've been operating,
right,
the extensive work that they have to undertake to share data and put in the mechanisms to manage disputes and all of those things. And what you find is that it's difficult for them to continuously repeat that process for new players.
Oh.
So it makes it difficult for new entrants.
In an information age, you believe that it's a lot of work. It should be taking members of the financial system to provide information to the credit bureaus?
It does when you start to add different bureaus, because every bureau has different systems, different specifications, and it does take more work. And you'd find that system developers charge for this development work.
Yes.
And once you have different bureaus, and a consumer raising a dispute, would have to raise that dispute with each bureau. That would have to be managed. That financial institution would have to provide fixes to 4 bureaus, provide responses to 4 bureaus, and provide responses to the central bank with respect to those 4 pieces of inaccurate information that they put out. So each bureau that you add more work and more time, more money, more resources to these financial institutions. That makes it difficult for the new entrant to really get off the ground.
What's your view on that, Terrence?
Yeah, I would have to concur with that, because right now what the institutions are telling us that for the amount of work and effort that is required to report to 2 separate credit bureaus is enough, and they're not really have the appetite to repeat that process for a 3rd, 4th, possibly 5th bureau. And I don't think it would make sense for an entity to enter this market once it's already been established and the large institutions have put.
But that should be a decision made by the entities, not by the regulator to put a limit, because right now there's no limit.
That's
and there are 3 players.
And I think that's the position the BOJ is taking.
Yes.
But it really doesn't behoove an entrant to come into a market as small and limited as Jamaica, because it requires a huge capital investment.
But that's something the potential entrant would have to work out for themselves.
Yes, definitely. I would agree.
Okay.
But logistically, it just doesn't make sense to have 4, 5, 6 credit bureaus in a market like this. It just doesn't make any sense. But again, as you said, leave that up to any potential entrant to make that decision.
Precisely, because it's a market. Okay.
Right.
Now, you spoke about bringing other players such as landlords and property managers into the system. Tell our listeners a little about that.
Yeah, well, right now, the Credit Reporting Act limits the number of entities and the types of entities that can access credit information, as well as pulling down the credit report.
Right.
What we're suggesting is to broaden that to other industries and entities such as the collection agencies, landlords, property managers, because again, they are offering a form of credit, and in order to be able to report accurate information, we need to be able to access that information directly from those entities.
Yes.
When you look at credit collection agencies as an example, people are paying off their debt through these third-party entities, and it is not being reported into the credit bureau.
Yes.
So oftentimes you will find they go for a loan and outstanding debt, pop, which has already been settled, but it is not reflected on the
Agreed.
credit
That
report.
makes a whole lot of sense. Now, Craig, you're contending that the demand for the services is not what you had expected it to be. For example, you're quoted as saying the market has tiptoed into using credit bureaus.
Right.
Yes.
With respect to the value-added services that the credit bureau offers.
Yes.
Because, of course, credit reporting is our core product. Just like for banking, it would be, deposits and loans is their core product. But they have a whole host of other financial services.
Right.
And so do the bureaus with our consultancy, our decision solutions, our information solutions.
Have you been marketing these services?
Yes, we have. We have been marketing these services. Terence can attest to that as well, because I know they have been doing so on their side. But the take-up is just not as what we would have expected.
Yes.
But, of course, we continue to push, and we do see the demand growing, and we hope that it grows faster.
Okay. What's your view on that, Terence?
Yeah, and I think it's just a matter of time. Remember, we're only 5-6 years into the establishment of these bureaus.
Yes.
When we look at the more developed markets, they're 30, 40, 50 years down the road. So we do see some of the more progressive institutions looking at these value-added services, moving towards automated decisioning, online application and loan processes. And these are things where the credit bureau can assist these entities to speed up and expedite the whole loan adjudication process. So I believe it takes time. We just have to keep plugging away at it. And as the market matures and evolves and the competitiveness of the environment increases, the institutions will have virtually no choice but to utilize technology and online access for consumers, because that's really where the market is going.
Okay. Now, Craig, you were also quoted as saying that part of the insufficient demand is due to the fact that some of the laws governing the operations of the bureaus are impractical to apply. For example, tell our listeners.
Well, the consent is our biggest issue.
Consumer content.
Yeah, consumer consent.
Yes.
That is required for the report to be accessed. And it's currently drafted where it has to be written consent. And there are provisions that were given to us to allow for electronic consent. But we just need that to be codified, because electronic consent, digital consent is really what drives online lending. So yes, we do have services and systems that can help with your online lending. But in order to get the credit report within that process, it still requires consent. And we just need those guidelines that were issued to us to be properly codified into law, so that we can push our value-added services much further.
Okay. Now, Terence, do you share Craig's view that the market must eventually recognize credit bureaus not only as credit reporting agencies, but as complete risk management solutions?
Yes, definitely, because it behooves them to utilize the unique position that the credit bureaus have. You have to remember, all of these institutions are reporting information into the bureaus. So we are a central repository. So we have access to the entire country's credit history, credit behavior, delinquencies, the amount of credit card debt that's out there. All of this information we have at our fingertips. And again, the more progressive institutions, if they start to use that information to their benefit, it will aid them immensely in providing better service to their customers. It will also help in reducing interest rates and lowering costs. Because once the organization maximizes our services and utilizes these analytics to their advantage, they will see efficiencies in their operations.
Craig, is it the duty of the market to recognize this, or is it your duty to market yourself as such?
It is our duty to market ourselves as such,
yes.
Definitely, because we can only control what we can control.
Right.
And we continue to do so, and you're helping us as well.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Always a pleasure.
But yes, we do market these things, and we'll continue to do so in much stronger fashion, as you'll see coming up in the near future.
Okay.
Because it's time for us to make that shift now as we go into this digital age. We need to access and look at all these other products and services that can definitely, as Terence mentioned, aid these institutions in making much better decisions and improving their efficiencies.
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Ralston.
Pleasure to have had you both. Okay. Right. That was Craig Stephen, Chief Executive Officer of Creditinfo JA, and Terence Cooper, Chief Executive Officer of CREEF Information Bureau, talking about the existing laws governing the operations of the country's 3 credit bureaus, the upcoming review of these laws, and their potential to enhance the products and services being offered to the market.
Do you have a difficulty finding security to get a business loan? Call 876-9